You're tuning into the Active Mom Podcast with physical therapist, Dr. Carrie Pagliano, a real mom's guide to all things postpartum return to workouts after baby. If you're a postpartum mom, coach, trainer, or physical therapist looking for answers on how to get back to running, CrossFit, yoga, Pilates, HIIT, you name it, without the fear of pelvic floor issues or doing something wrong, this is the podcast for you. Let's start the show. All right. So one of the best things about being online is you get to chat with some really cool people. And it's probably a couple weeks ago, our next guest and I, we got into, for me, it was an early morning. For her, it was an afternoon conversation about breast strategies and jaw and evidence and all sorts of stuff. And then when I scrolled back, we've been talking for a couple of years on DMs. And so I thought it was a great opportunity to bring our next guest, Paulina Ioannidou, I got it right, hopefully, on the podcast. Paulina is a former MMA athlete. She's a PhD student in Cologne, Germany, and also the owner of a physio facility. And she's a mom of a 3-year-old boy. So she kind of is like the quadfecta, if that's a thing. So Paulina, thanks for being on the Active Mom Postpartum podcast.
Thanks for the invitation.
So let's start from the beginning. You were a professional MMA athlete. Like, what is that? I know of it, but what does that entail? And like physically, what are the challenges?
Yes, MMA, it's the short form for mixed martial arts, including all kind of different martial arts that is fought in an octagon. Most of you guys in the US know, of course, the UFC, biggest organization everybody wants to join. On the other side, it includes, well, as I said, boxing, wrestling, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, different kind of martial arts. And I started actually with Thai boxing when I was 16 or 17. I went after my school for about 6 weeks to Thailand and learned a little bit more about Muay Thai, and went into a facility where they had also Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and wrestling. So I tried everything a little bit out. I had 1-2 Thai box fights in Thailand back then. When I finished my physio school, I had a half year off and went again back to Thailand because I was so fascinated by all the training and motivational surroundings you had there, and just going straight into camp after camp. And when my ex-boyfriend, he was a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructor back then, so I went straight into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well, and had the great idea to compete in an amateur tournament in Bangkok when I was 23. So I won that tournament and I was really hooked into that sport. So I went back to Germany, joined a wrestling team. I joined a boxing club and a grappling facility, and went straight into the professional way of training. Of course, it's in Germany. Even if you fight professionally, you don't get paid. And you get paid, let's say about $500 per fight, which is nothing for 3 months of hardcore training and every kind of camp. So you just not even get paid your groceries for that amount of
Oh my
money.
goodness.
On the other side, I did my bachelor's degree in physiotherapy on the same time, and straight afterwards, my master's degree was in a sports university. I always had competitions in between, so as well as the topic we talked about before we recorded the podcast, I've been always into extreme weight cuts and really bad situations for my body without any knowledge or proper knowledge during that time, because we just like, okay, just lose some weight as a female. When the coaches say, just go and drop some weight, just go and drop some weight. And you have really bad issues to drop your weight, because when you're in a period or you have a proper cycle and you don't take contraceptives,
Right.
your cycle has some peaks and estrogen, or peaks in progesterone, where you can just literally hold on some water, which I was really struggling with. So I had some very, very hard weight cuts. And yes, parallelly did in my master's degree. Then I met my husband. And 2019, I also said, okay, I want to have my last competition. And straight afterwards, I got pregnant. So this is the story how we
You don't
ended.
waste any time, do you?
No, it was literally like, okay, I just had my competition, and a month later I was pregnant. And then I was in that situation where I literally went in not only on Instagram but on other sources as well to get some proper information, because I just came straight from full-time training camp,
Right.
and then everybody said, well, now you're supposed to rest, but my body was like still firing.
Right.
So I was searching for anything that gave me a proper guideline to that whole process, and also for documenting it on myself, because it's like it's not possible that, especially we here in Germany, have a very let's say it carefully, immobile lifestyle, like sedentary lifestyle, with like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
if you're pregnant, don't move, take care, you have to rest. If you're injured, stay calm, don't move, rest. And this is
Right.
something that gets a really like movement or early activity has a bad reputation here. So I don't know why, because we have enough data, so we have early mobilization on structures and tissue. So I was like, okay, I don't give a fuck what Germany says. Let's look around the States and Canada. So
Yeah.
founding the first thing I found have been the from the Olympic Committee,
Yep.
like a very it's like a 4 or 5 parts or even more about athletic female, let's say it like that. So recommendations, how to train, how to modificate some things. And on the other side, I was like, okay, like grappling and wrestling was something I couldn't do by myself properly, because I knew
Right.
as soon as the belly got bigger, I had a lot of full contact, so it's not possible. So this is unfortunately was something I had to ditch very early. I think after 4 or 5 months, I stopped doing grappling, except like we have this wrestling dolls where you
Mm-hmm.
can just do a little bit of positioning and getting your positions into that in that movement. But what I did till the end was actually boxing. I had my coach, I was holding pads, and I think 1 week before, the little one came, I was still doing pads. And it's very funny because I had such a massive belly. Was still when I was looking last week on my videos, I was like, I was very agile still with a very big belly. But that was something I did actually 1 week before I went into labor.
You could
And
still do that. Yeah.
so yeah, boxing was my cardio on that point.
Did
Yeah,
you
on the other side.
Did
Hmm?
you feel like in the beginning of pregnancy that it was just completely like there was no information for an athlete like you? You've got your culture that's saying, "Don't do anything," but your athlete culture is like, "Hey, I've gotta be active." Like, how could you even find somebody that wanted to grapple with a pregnant woman? Like that that would be challenging
Yeah,
too.
this was one thing, because I knew, especially in Germany, we don't have a lot of physios who have a master degree or do a PhD. So I needed to find
Mm,
a person or a sports scientist who actually knew what to do, but
yep.
I couldn't find anyone. And then I was like, okay, there is no data that any
No.
woman died or the kids died because they did their
Right.
sports.
No one's gonna do that
So
study, by the way.
that's exactly, that's the point. So
Yeah.
this is also the whole problem on pregnancy and every kind of study design on that, because no ethical mission is going to allow that. This is the biggest issue. You just have questionnaires. You can just do maybe some ultrasound data on the pelvic floor during pregnancy, but even that, we have the thermic index on ultrasound, so we have to be very careful with that during pregnancy, whatever. So I was like, okay, how can I find for myself some sort of guideline, or how can I measure it
Right.
for myself, what's fine or not? So finding a little bit from here, from that. At the beginning, I was a little bit, the only thing I did a little bit care of was my heart rate, because it was like, okay, there's no proper data on
Right.
that. Maybe just have a look at it. I used my heart rate monitoring with just a proper belt.
Yep.
And it was quite fine, and I didn't feel any bad. If, of course, your rate of perceived exertion is so high, so quick.
Well, right.
So I
And you're
felt so
monitoring
tired.
all this, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah,
it's not like you have a physician who's an OB and understands MMA and understands where you tend to train. Like, you're guiding all this.
yeah, it's very nice because I still have the data for myself. So I was like
Right.
looking, okay, my heart rate when I did boxing was increasing every trimester without changing anything of intensity.
Mm,
But of course, you have everything like the RPE scale or whatever you use for
right.
objectivation of exertion. But for me, it was like, okay, as long as I could still be able to kind of talk. I know it was very hard for
Yep.
me to talk, but as long as I'm not in a, let's say, CrossFit workout end stage where I'm like dying
You're
and
gonna
lying on the
die,
floor,
right?
I'm completely fine. So that was for me, my guideline. As long as I'm exhausted, it's fine. As long as I can stand, as long as I don't have any problems
Yeah,
with my blood pressure, I don't feel any
you felt pretty
nauseous or
comfortable.
whatever, I'm completely fine.
Yeah.
So even my resistance training, I modified, of course. I just like push-ups and everything I did on parallel, so my belly's not touching the floor. And I was completely, I mean, I must say I had a lot of backlashes here, like especially on social media
I
or
was
from
gonna
people on.
ask, what was the feedback like putting it out there? Because it's funny, like, I mean, this was back in 2019 to 2020, which doesn't
Mhm.
seem like that long ago,
But still a
but
lot came.
still, like, I think it's more common now, and there's so many more pro athletes that are coming back and
Yes.
working out in pregnancy. I can't imagine even just 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, especially that was exactly the case. So during my pregnancy, I was quite similar pregnant with Annie.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, okay, she does still that. So that's not, of course, we're two different
Right.
athletes. But say, hey, another person does the same shit I'm doing now, try and error. Of course, the error is very, if some that would be a very bad error. But on the other
Right.
side, okay, we do and train. So I was thinking, oh, she does that. Okay, fine, I do that. That's completely fine. So none of us had any harm. Of course, every birth story is different. So I had a very
Right.
nice and easy birth. On the other side, because people always judge, especially if you have over 1 million followers, and yeah, of course, that labor went not as good as that labor
Right.
because probably she trained too much or whatever
Who
bullshit is around
knows?
about.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was just nice for me to see that also other female athletes go through their own experience of I just try and get my fitness level on that level, or at least to try to keep that fitness level, not getting better, but keep and
Just
staying
try and
fit
keep it. Yeah.
during that pregnancy. And that was just my aim. I said, okay, I just want to stay fit because who
Right.
knows how long I can train when the kid is there, which is the main problem, of course.
Right.
But
Well,
everybody finds a way.
it's so interesting. Again, it's very different in the rear view. I remember following Annie Thorisdottir during that time, and of course, that was just the peak of lockdown and whatnot. And you see that, but also in the context of you as a physio and like an educated athlete, you don't have a lot of resources. You're trying to do the best you can. You're trying to use what guidance is out there, but there's
Mm,
not really a lot. But to also put that stuff out there to try and educate others, like I give you a lot of credit for that because I can't imagine my kids are 9 and 12. I can't imagine relaying that experience and processing it myself while, sharing it with the public at the same time. But again, you learn so much in the rear view, I think, to be able to look back and be like, yeah, okay, this is what worked for me. And it, with a good delivery, with the outcomes that you were looking for, very different, of course, than Annie, who's been really open about her experience, which I really appreciate because I think that's the
mm,
other thing too. Like there's so many moms that look up to these athletes. We had a discussion about this before. Um, and you don't know their experience. And if they don't share, and
yeah.
granted, it's their prerogative whether they want to or not, but we sometimes think of ourselves like them, which we're not, and judge ourselves, against them, which we shouldn't. But it's a whole, it kind of, social media can play with your head, but it also can be educational if you kind of allow it
That's the
to be.
thing. That's completely the thing. In Germany, we have still a lot of channels with a lot of misinformation, with a
Yeah.
lot of. We have to start with the education of a physio. It's not an academic job we have here. So you have like a diploma at the beginning, so 3 year
Hmm.
of physio school, which is not evidence based. We learn a lot about a lot of techniques which are very old fashioned.
Right.
Um, and then the next step is that you have to do the bachelor degree or the master's degree or go full time or go into a PhD student program.
Hmm.
And 80% of the students just stay with their diploma and then they just go into maybe
Oh,
they learn from different institutes because an institute is something you can just build up in Germany. So I
right.
can also just build up my institute of whatever
Hmm.
musculoskeletal health, and then you get your diploma when you went into my 3 classes or whatever. So that's the system. It's not a very good academic controlled system. And on the other side, the academization of a physiotherapist is also something that's quite new. So research in physio is not old. Research, especially in musculoskeletal rehabilitation, is not very old. So we don't have much data about that whole process. And same as we go now. So who's also responsible for the research of pregnancies? Is it a GYN? Like, is it a
Right.
gynecologist? Who is it? Is it sports scientist? Is it the physio that treats pregnant women? So this is something that is probably mostly accelerated by moms who are into that profession, because every woman I was talking to in that field, like Christina Previtt, I had a chat with,
Yes,
and
she's lovely.
yeah, and a call, because I was
Yep.
like, okay, we need something like barbell mamas here in Germany. So I did it now here in my facility with like always 10 women who are physio. So starting from the physiology, hormonal state, and whatever, 10 hours we got all the input from. So with Christina, so I was reaching out to Dublin, to Grain Donnelly,
Yep.
talking with her, went to her seminar, and then you just grab all your
You pull
straws and
from,
find.
yeah, it's very similar, I think, to what we do. But for you guys, like, what is this, like, what's the standard pathway for a mom? Like, she'll see a GYN for pregnancy, or do you have midwives as well there,
We
or?
have midwives, but
Okay.
again, the same thing with midwives. It's not a study. They don't study anything properly, so they still learn from, I
Mm,
would say, 1930s. And now it became a bachelor degree as well. So they learn
okay.
about different other, let's say, networking professions, including a little bit about nutrition, a little bit about movement or sports science or whatever.
Mhm.
So you need to educate all these fields. Like, I educate physios, midwives have been here, I educate personal trainers,
Mhm.
because they always reach out to me now and say, okay, look, we need information. How can I train my pregnant population? How can I work
Right.
with former athlete that wants to get back into competition?
Right.
So yeah, I've always to fill that gap of, you have your
Yes.
profession and now the female athlete, and we have, it's called physiopelvica here. It's like physio, the professionalization of physios in the area of pelvic health and floor,
Mhm.
but they are a whole different level. They just see the pelvic floor and not the athlete. So you get a lot of backlash from
Oh,
them, because
okay.
they're like, oh, but she's not allowed to move or lift that heavy that early. I'm like,
Right.
yes. But now I had a former Olympionic or German national athlete in weightlifting, and she was so strong during her pregnancy. She
Yeah.
was lifting stuff I would not imagine being able to back squat even now. And after pregnancy, she had a C-section, which was for her the best decision, because
Mhm.
her pelvic floor was, let's say, untouched in a certain way. But her kid, she's very, very tall and very strong, but her kid was also very big and very long. So that was the best decision for her, that she got a C-section. But she was very fit. I think after a couple of weeks, we had our testings, we had our trainings, and now after 1 year, she went fully back to competition. So people
That's
are like, "Oh
great.
my God, how can you do that?" And her pelvic floor is like, she literally had no issues. And we did
Right.
examinations. She had her questionnaires, and she was
Fine.
fit, and she was
Yep.
fully recovered. And still people come around and say, yeah, but this is actually not good for her pelvic floor. It's like, look, that athlete was lifting 110 kilos overhead squatting in her
Right.
third trimester, and you judge her and say she's not strong enough.
And that comes from their ignorance, lack of understanding, and we run into that here a little bit, with so my background, I was an orthopedic therapist first, then became pelvic floor. They were very different, and then we just mashed it up, and that's what I've been doing ever since. And there's more of a trend of that, but at the same time, we have more physios graduating from PT school here, going straight into pelvic floor work without any sort of sports or orthopedic background. And I feel
That's
like you
exactly
miss
the problem.
so much. They don't have a sense to look at other parts of the body, and it's very tunnel vision, and it sounds like that's similar to what's being developed there. What is standard of care in Germany for any sort of postpartum
So we have
rehabilitation?
6 week, 6 weeks. It's in Germany. If we say the translation, it's called Wochenbett. It's called week bed.
Okay.
So 6 weeks of week bed, Wochenbetts, means for the there is a very old-fashioned saying: the first week you're in the bed, the second week you go around the bed, the third week you stand up from the bed, and then you walk to your bed, and it's like very ridiculous. So
Oh
I
my
start.
goodness.
It's very crazy. So you force them into a very sedentary lifestyle, and
Yeah.
it's obsolete, because as soon as you have your second child, you cannot just
Right.
stay in bed, not even for
Yes.
one day. So the whole thing is very rigid and old fashioned. So normally you have a midwife that looks about, depending on your scars, the height of your uterus, any kind of injuries, and then of course depending on if you breastfeed or not. So they
Mhm.
just try at least to get you a little surrounding at home, how you breastfeed, how you can how wound healing is supposed to be, and but it's not exercising or anything at all.
Right.
You don't have any pelvic floor examinations except when you have a massive injury. So they recommend for you after the 6th week that
Right.
you go into a pelvic floor specialist to have any sort of examination, depending on manual therapy, ultrasound, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, and when I have women who are very athlete come or just contact me from Germany or whatever, and it's like, oh, they said 6 week, I'm not allowed to do anything, because they
Oh,
say, well, we ruin my pelvic floor, and it's like, you can do so many exercising, sitting or lying on your belly, lying on your back.
yep.
Just grab yourself some small tools like a mini band or resistance band and do your stuff in the bed,
Yep.
because they have back pain, they have shoulder pain from breastfeeding, because they just
Yes.
sit there like a golem and completely spastic because they're very nervous.
Yes.
So you can do, as you said, for me, the rehab begins from the first day. And if it's small movement, small isometric exercise, just something that they can
Yeah.
rely to, because if you lie on your bed, even for 1 or 2 days, you have heavy bleedings. And of course, you need to move, even for
Yep.
the wound healing, for your whole metabolism.
Well,
And
even for mental health, I think
even
too.
just
I
for
mean,
mental health,
getting
of
out of
course.
the house and fresh air. Here in the States, I think probably since 2018, they've been advocating for a little bit earlier care. And I tend to use ultrasound imaging a lot in those first couple weeks. I know you
Mm.
work with that as well. Is that something that you're able to do there, that you can kind of see these women a little bit sooner and use imaging without doing the internal pelvic floor exam?
Exactly. This is why I bought last year a handheld device,
Yes.
because I can just have it on my iPad, and depending where the women are living or when they're quite close to my facility, as well as because the other thing, in Germany, they're very scared of the rectus diastasis.
Yes,
This
here
is
too.
something. Oh my God, I have two things. I'm like, "That's completely fine." And yeah, but the doctor said, I was like, look, you don't give a shit what the doctor says. You
Right.
have, like, the physical abnormality of that gap is up to 2.5 centimeters. So chill and
Right?
relax, and we just need to still need to strengthen that. And of course, it's in effect with the pelvic floor. But we have here another myth, is that you're not allowed to use your rectus abdominis in the first six
Ugh.
weeks. They
How
said
do
you
you how do you
don't.
get up? How do you get off the toilet?
I
Like,
said to them, how do you sneeze? How do you take a shit? It's so many
right?
things you need. And talking about the phenomenon, the myth of the rectus diastasis, and the fear of doing a wrong movement. And this is
Right.
another thing. I just said to them, look, you don't do anything wrong. Just do it however you want to do it. And as long as we don't have any issues, and you have just to such graded exposure, get slowly back into that movement.
Yep.
We had 10 months, a massive, or at least 3 months, the last 3 months, massive belly. And of course, it's something we have to get again, breathe back into your tummy, abdominal breathing. Of course, you have to
Yeah.
learn some things new. But first, you have a baby, then you don't have to put that woman into more fears. And like, you don't have to do this. If you sneeze, you have first to
Right.
contract your pelvic floor, sneeze, and then relax again. So you have
My
so many
question
tasks with a
I
newborn.
know.
So
I my
just
my
try to get
question
at least less fears.
my question is, and I don't know that you have an answer for it, is how is it that an ocean apart, like, why are women, like, so fixated on these I talk about diastasis recti as a gateway drug because they get so fixated on it, but they won't talk to you about leakage. Like they're really
Mhm.
worried about the abdominal separation, which is really, my joke here is that 98% of women here think they have it and they don't. I had it after my second. I've turned it into a party trick that I can turn on my transversus and I can turn it off and I can cone, and I've learned to
Mm.
manipulate it for fun. But like, why do we get fixated on the thing that doesn't matter? But it's so like freaks us out. Like, why?
I have no idea, and especially I thought maybe about aesthetics or something, so
I
women
think it
really want to
has to
get
be.
back to that and a flat tummy again. I have no idea. I'm happy that my clients and my patients learn that they rather come here to get strong and not to be a bikini
Yes.
model for bodybuilding. So
Well,
rather
and
have a
that's
physical capacity.
that's the
If
thing
they
too,
want
is
to, they can get that.
but most of
But on
them
the other
never
side,
had that before.
no, of course not.
Me, I never had that before. It wasn't in my thing, but no, I'm getting so many women. Like I had a mom yesterday. She's in her second trimester. Lots of sacroiliac pain to the point where she was having limping when walking. Her She had that, but she's like, I really want to prevent diastasis recti. I'm like, why? Of all the things you need to be worried about right now, that is not one of them.
Yes,
Oh
exactly.
my
Especially when
goodness.
I train with them, they're like, "Is it going to force my rectus diastasis?" No, it's
Right.
not. You need a strong core
Ah,
even during pregnancy. And if you have a weak one now,
right.
a weak rectus abdominis, it's not getting stronger when you
When you
don't
do
train,
nothing.
and especially,
Yes.
and it's going to loosen up more and more. And we have a colleague, Sandra Gluppe, is doing in Denmark a lot of research on that one, just at
Mhm.
least to kick off that myth that curling up is
Right.
worsening the rectastasis. So at least you can tell them it's not worsening. If it's doing better, it's still in the discussion. But on the other side, having a weak core was never
Right.
good, and
That's a bigger issue.
so
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
just
So when
let
you
them
have
train.
women that come find you, I'm assuming a lot of them are athletes and they resonate with your athletic history. Do you have moms that have gone to see a physio and they're not really doing much and they're proactively looking for something different? Like, how do people generally find you?
It really depends. I must say that Instagram, as we talked about, is something good and something bad. So I have
Yep.
a lot of women that just write me. Even explain very the first thing you read is now Insta consultation,
Right.
but then they just do appointments. Instagram is one thing. On the other thing, a lot of networking with
Right.
gynecologists here in Germany, in Cologne, orthopedics, because they get also a pregnant population to see because they have lower back pain and say, look, you have to train a little bit, but at least find a person that knows how you can train during pregnancy. Even if I say just find a proper personal trainer who just don't put you on your tummy, doesn't hit you on the belly, whatever. So
Mhm.
it's actually quite easy to train a pregnant person.
Yeah.
But at least they feel quite safe when I say, look, we do this, we do that. Here's some
Right.
guidelines. Just don't do any prone or whatever exercises. And
Mhm.
maybe we should not, if you've never done sports, do now 50 toes to bar or whatever.
Right.
Just to
That's
get a
not the time
proper
to start.
exactly. So we just find a proper way, and I just treat them like a normal rehab. I say, look, we have a regression, we can scale a lot of exercise, we can do a lot of movement. We just need to find something again like a normal rehab person who has a knee
Right.
injury or whatever. Graded exposure, load and capacity needs to be equal, and we find a way how to get you stronger and make your back less painful because your belly gets bigger, and
Right.
have to increase the capacity for you and make you fit for the postpartum period. And it's a very smooth way that needs to be. I said 90% I do the first half an hour's education. So to tell them
Yes.
that they don't have to fear movement in pregnancy, neither do they
Yep.
have to fear it when the baby is out.
Exactly. And then
And this is
moving on
this
to postpartum for you, again, there's a little bit more guidance there on what to do. Like, what were your goals kind of in that first postpartum kind of couple of months? How was the expectations kind of compared to the reality?
for myself now, for my
Yeah.
birth.
Yep.
Oh yeah, it was a quite hard hit. I mean, I'm self-employed as well, so
Oh, that's
I
hard.
was working quite early with the kids. The only thing I can say to the women as well is my best insurance for my body was that I was staying so fit during pregnancy. If I haven't been so fit during my pregnancy, I would have struggled way much more postpartum.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any depressions. I was very glad that I really got. I also managed my own rehab a little bit, so I was also examining myself and had a look, which is another thing, proper in the mirror. I didn't have any proper wounds. My midwife was quite happy. She was like, "You fitter than I am, even if you're 2 weeks postpartum." But on the other side, sleep deprivation was one of the worst things that kicked in quite bad, especially at the
Right.
beginning. And
Yep.
well, the unknown. You have a kid now. I think it's going to chill when you have another one. So you know at least a little bit how you manage
Yep.
when you have a crybaby or when the kid's crying a lot.
Yes.
On the other side, it's a lot of preparation. I said to you, there's for literally every woman, it's such an individual case. I had the urge that I had to work, so I needed to be fit after 8 weeks. I needed to have a certain capacity. I needed to be very stable in breastfeeding and
Mm-hmm.
getting my pump, getting the kids that is drinking from a bottle. I needed a lot of things that needed to work the first 8 weeks.
Yep.
So I had a little pressure that certain things would work.
Yeah.
Um, on the other side, it's another thing. We always talk about like limitations. We have a lot of limitations in that time. I could train because, especially during Corona, during the
Right.
lockdowns, I could train because we had a lot of stuff at home.
Mm-hmm.
I could train. I didn't really partner up with my husband because he's working also a little bit at the border and was sometimes weeks there or not. But I had my mom, so at
Mm-hmm.
least I could partner up with my mom and said, "Please take the kid. I need to move."
Yep.
Had the knowledge about food and not getting into a big deficit. Even I know it's a hard thing to get proper food during the first period, 6 weeks. You just eat trash,
Right.
you eat whatever you find. But to get me some sort of meal prep, even if I ordered a lot of food, but at least it was not junk. So I could, okay, get me a salad, get this, get that, get my proteins, get my
Right.
supplements. But this is just my own education. So I try when I have athletes and I know they have to train, they have to go back to
Right.
get them into a proper state of energy fueling for getting a proper intake. There's one guideline, the Canadian guideline for breastfeeding or nutrition during pregnancy and breastfeeding. It's 220 pages, I think, long.
Mm-hmm.
So at least that you have a standard of how much energy you need in that period, in
Right.
that period, in that period, and calculate your calories so you're not dropping that much weight, which is very essential because this is a thing I see in so many women that come here that they're in such a long energy deficit that they get,
Yes.
of course, all red as symptoms. They
Yep.
come here, they have not only hair loss, which is especially normal because of all the hormonal chaos we have, but on the other side, they have a massive deficit in so many macro micronutrients,
Yep.
iron, vitamin B12, whatever, in so many things. And then they get the blood sorted out. And I'm like, look, not only you have to supplement, but you just need to eat more and get some energy in your.
Right. That's such a great point. I feel like there's the red S conversation, the energy availability conversation. I feel like that's really come to the forefront the last couple of years. The hard part is I think we're just starting to talk about this in the context of our athletes. I don't know that it's filtering down yet to our regular postpartum moms that are trying to lose the baby weight. They're not understanding that they need to eat more to breastfeed. If they're
Mm,
overtraining, all that stuff, they really don't know that they could possibly set themselves up for this. But like if you
yeah,
look in the rear view on a lot of American distance runners and things like that have been really open about their past histories of
yeah,
stress fractures and things before kids, and then it continued on after. For you, I mean, you've got not only the PhD training, and you're looking research-wise into hormones and nutrition, but also like that history with needing to cut weight and manage fuel and that kind of stuff too. So what are the biggest challenges you see for like the regular postpartum mom? Like what are the biggest things that you see, and what are the easiest changes that they can make?
On that thing, I would probably say organization, or
Yes.
somebody that tells them that they need to organize their food.
Yeah.
I know that meal prep is nothing for everybody. It's something that's not suitable for everybody. It takes time, and but on the other side, to get a proper regular feed in, to get a regular energy intake, and same thing I tell different people. I mean, you just mentioned the pro athlete runners, red S, or in general, that kind of problem occurs into so many female athletes that have to do
Right.
some sort of weight cut. And I tell them first, with the postpartum population is different because, especially if they breastfeed,
Yes.
they do not really know what kind of energy intake they have to do. It's even
Right.
hard for me. I rather say just eat more.
Yep.
But of course, it's always the issue. And then you have stress. You sleep deprived, you have
Right.
then maybe again like, oh, I still have 5 pounds more in my body, and whatever it's happening. So at least I have some sort of 3 times a day a proper meal. I just said, like, look, have a
Hmm.
meal, at least look that there's some protein in it, because as we know, as my research on postmenopausal women, we need protein for muscle synthesis, protein synthesis. We need some sort of little resistance training in that period. We can do that with resistance bands, where we know
Hmm.
you get a little bit of stimulation, and try to get yourself some habits, was just very hard with a newborn because we don't have a sleep rhythm.
Right.
Every day is like, oh my God, which time is it? Which year
Right.
is it?
What year is
Who
it?
am I? Like, whoa. And yeah, so try, this is something I tell them right before when they come in the last trimester, and then
Yeah.
I'm serious about it. I say, we have some quite nice meal prep companies. So I said, look, these are some meal prep companies where you can get, if you're vegan, that kind, where I know that they have some decent protein in
Hmm.
that meal, so they can order it. And it's like, even if it's just microwave meal prep food, but at least you have your macros fine,
It's right.
and just something that makes it easier. And it needs to be practicable. It needs to be, yeah, well, all the smart principles. And
Yeah.
this is
With
something I just try to get them into.
With protein, I find that that can be a double-edged sword. First of all, moms don't realize how much they need, so I'm curious your opinion on, like, a good place for moms to start. And then the other kind of side of the coin is, um, they will try and increase it too fast and not be aware of fiber and end up
Mm.
incredibly constipated. So if you're having that protein conversation, how do you figure out where somebody should start with their intake?
Especially if they're not vegan, I always recommend, well, something like skyr, or like yogurt, like milk protein,
Mhm.
way they can get it, because it's also a little bit assisting them with their peristaltic, like at least they can get some,
Right.
have increased stool. Um, yeah, this is something if they're not vegan. On the other side, I try to get them something like lentils, or something they can cook, and it's very easy. Quinoa. Have a nice meal prep with quinoa. You just boil half a kilo, and you can put it on 5 meals for the next 3 days.
Right.
So find some sources that are suitable for them, something that they might like or not. If they like meat, meat is always, especially if they eat meat, red meat, so they have a little bit of iron, they have a little bit of this, they have
Mhm.
vitamin B12. It has a good profile in micronutrients. So find something that's suitable for them. And I just try, at least as I said, the first half an hour is mostly just education. I just try to ask them what do they eat, or how do they move, how do they eat, at
Yep.
least to try to get them some sort of organization plan. And if I have some sources of, look, try that meal prep, just buy for the next 2 weeks. It doesn't
Yep.
make a difference if you go to the grocery store, because you don't, and then you don't cook, and then you just go again to the bakery and have 3 croissants, and now you have literally just fat and carbs and no proteins.
Right, although that sounds
Um,
really good. I'm sure your
it does,
croissants are
but it's
better than ours.
I we're quite close to French. But thank you. On the other side, it just needs something they feel good, and then we have, it's always a very, it's a big thing. Then we have also
Yeah,
the mental health on that thing. But as you said, like red S is something that also fucks with your mind. You
it
have
does.
increased mental fatigue on that, and
Yep.
if you sleep deprived, if you might have also the predisposition for postpartum depression, then an energy
Yep.
deficit is really nothing you need as well on that top of the
Right.
iceberg.
Well, and I think it's it's so important. I love that you talk to moms early about this, and I try and do the same as educate as early as we can in pregnancy or even before, if possible, because it is a lot of information to take in. And if the first time that you're taking it in is while you are sleep deprived, while you are trying to learn how to parent a small human,
Mhm.
and you've got fluids coming out of every orifice in your body and all of that, like that's a lot. And so I really think having somebody kind of on your team to help you navigate it and do like one thing at a time, or like you said, simplify it and keep it organized. Like the less brain cells you can waste on this, the better. If you just,
Yeah.
I know if I eat this food, it's okay. And then of course, what we haven't mentioned, I had this with my first, I tried to do like higher protein right off the bat with Greek yogurt, and my son's stool was not having it. And so, of course, you're worried about if they're having GI issues or all these other things too. Like
Lactose
it's
intolerance, yeah.
exactly, it's logistical nightmare if you don't have somebody to help you methodically work through it. And I feel like it's the same thing with kind of navigating pelvic floor symptoms too. Like it can seem like you've got everything all over the place, especially, if somebody's telling you not to lift and you know that you want to lift and you can't find anybody in your area that knows how to help you lift. You don't know what to do. It's kind of deer in headlights. So finding somebody that knows the process can help you kind of break it down and navigate it in a much more digestible
Mm.
way. I think it just takes so much stress off because you don't have to reinvent the wheel, although you kind of did with your own rehab. I mean, I wouldn't recommend that for everybody, but you at least had the resources that you could kind of patchwork this stuff together
Exactly. I
professionally.
I also put it in my stories because I had a lot of people saying that, yeah, why did you start so early?
Hmm.
Because I had to. And now we have in Germany, or we talk always about the big gender data gap. So we have
Yes.
a lack of information on female athletes, and the professionalization of the female athlete is that also if it's a profession for a runner that she needs to go back
Right.
to her Olympic qualification, then it's her
Yep.
job. So we need to get her safe back so that she's injury free back into preparation. And that's exactly the same thing. I had to go
Yes.
to my facility almost around 8 weeks. And I knew not that time, but I knew that I would still want to do some sort of competition. So I had my competitions
Yeah.
this year and it was very nice. But on the other side, I know that I needed to be fit. I needed to stand here. I need to assist my patients because
Hmm.
we're mostly doing training therapy. So I'm not working a lot passively, but I have to put the weights back. I have to bring the weights. I
Right.
have to
It's
take
very
the plates. I
physical.
have to
Yep.
show the patient how he's doing his whatever squats, deadlift, carries, or whatever. So I needed to be stable for my profession. And that's why I started straight after 1 week. I did my
Yeah.
clamshells, I did my glute bridge, I did my nice core contractions. I had really for myself a very nice time. And when I try to get my patients here on that topic, educate them, and they're like, yeah, um, but how do you do it, especially if they're pregnant? Like you can, if we are talking about the realistic return to return to
Yeah.
activity process, it's very unrealistic that you can train straight after you give birth 1 hour in the gym or 90 minutes in the gym. First, you have to
Right.
breastfeed, then you need a person that takes care of the kid or
Yep.
whatever. So realistically, and that's why I'm telling all the women, and this is how I schedule the training plans for my women at home.
Hmm.
Small training snacks.
Yes.
Just do a quickie, 15 minutes. Concern like including whatever glute bridge, black burns, and just have do it in a superset, whatever. Get
Yep.
yourself a little bit of resistance band. Just do some rows. Just do some pec flies. Nice enough.
Yep.
Second 15 minutes, maybe you have time or not. At least that you have. It's like brushing your teeth. Just take 5 to 10 minutes. Do two or
Hmm.
three exercises, and don't stress yourself. I need to work out 90 minutes like I did before in a CrossFit box and do
Right.
this. Scale yourself, get a
Yes.
realistic expectation, because this is the first thing when you have a kid that slams, that hits you right in the face, that you cannot train straight how you did it
Yeah.
before, because without a
Exactly.
like the first child, pregnancy is the most relaxing thing you can ever imagine. Oh yes, my child, it's everything is so nice,
No.
and then the first kid comes out, and you're like, that's reality check. And now I can forget about how I expected to be 2 weeks straight in the gym, go
Right.
back to this, to that. No, you have a kid now, you have to have realistic expectations. And I tell that all my pregnant women here who are like, okay, how do you think? How quick can I start again? Like, first give birth, then you contact
Then go
me, and
from
then we
there.
talk.
Yep. Well, and
And
that's
we
as
see,
you're talking about those small movement snacks, it's really interesting because my oldest, um, my delivery was not awesome. My recovery was not great. I had a ton of swelling. I had
mm,
dequere veins, just like a lot of issues and um, a lot of pain in that first one. Just getting out the door to go for a block down the street was a big deal. I wouldn't have been even dreaming those first 2 weeks of a movement snack. Like, getting up and getting out of bed was an accomplishment. Getting a shower was a big deal. Like, walking a
yeah,
block was a big deal. And I always talk to people about that to give them a heads up. We don't know. You're an N of 1. Your doctor doesn't know. You don't know how this is gonna play out. Now
exactly.
that said, my second much better situation. We went home actually a little bit early. I had C-sections for both, but went home a little bit early for the second. I had to go, and move right away because my son was 2 and he didn't care. But just physically, I think I was more capable of doing more and had to, but time-wise, finding a movement snack with 2 kids under 2 and under was a challenge. So, I think, again, such a great idea to have those conversations about, if this scenario comes up, this is what you can do, and there's gonna be a couple different options. We don't know what it's gonna be, but prepare for all the things so when you
Yeah,
get there, you know where to start. So I love that you do
exactly.
that. That's awesome.
What
That's awesome.
also, what I also started, because I had another client, she came here now with her second pregnancy.
Mhm.
And we talked about that in her first postpartum period of the first kid, she had massive depressions. And
Mm,
then I actually gave her this time the Edinburgh Postpartum Depression Scale with. I said, look,
yeah,
if you have any feelings, fill it out or contact me, or we get back into with another physician. So if it's getting very bad, you need a prescription for medication or whatever.
right.
So you're not alone with that. Just so you have also like another part, because I knew from her, she said, please contact, if I don't contact you in 3 weeks, contact me, because I just forgot about it or
Yes,
whatever. So this is like the
yes.
opposite case. So from the other side of women contacting me after, for look, this is my baby, when can we train?
Right, when can we
To the
start?
other part, women on the other side are like, hey, look, can you please contact me or
Yep,
whatever, just to have a motivation to push, or yeah,
yep. I always, if I have women that I'm seeing in pregnancy, we set up a visit about 3 to 4 weeks after the due date to give or take a little bit, and we can always switch to virtual. And then we have the one after the 6 week visit so that they have that. They don't have to remember to do it. It's just they show up, it's
exactly.
planned, it's done. Yeah, that's so,
Nice.
so smart. That's so smart. All right. So at the end of each episode, I have a few questions that I ask all of our guests. For you, for favorite activity since becoming a mom?
Actually, unilateral carries and circle squats.
Ah!
Something I really implemented more and more and more. I always did it, but now it's something I put it. Yeah, it's really on my list.
I love that. That's amazing. How many hours a week are you in the gym now with that your son's 3?
Um, I try my best at least to have 3 times a strength session,
Yeah,
and twice appearing on the mat, like boxing or grappling.
that's awesome. That's so cool. All right, one piece of advice for new moms.
Oh, that's a difficult one, actually. I need to think about that, because I've got a couple of fresh moms, and what am I saying? Um,
Yeah,
the beginning is hard, but it's getting better.
yeah. Yeah, the beginning, and it's funny too. I have a friend that she just gave birth 2 days ago, I think, and texted me, and she had a C-section. It was unplanned, and I was like, now I can tell you all the things I would love to have told you before, but it wouldn't have made sense. And now that you are here, you will hear me because you're feeling all the things and the liquids are everywhere. And like
Exactly.
there's something that occurs, some portal that you walk through that everything I said before will now make sense in a very different way. So yeah, definitely. All right. Who is somebody in kind of this space that we're in that we should know about?
It's also a very difficult question. We had a talk about certain personalities in the CrossFit area. We've been not very happy about certain information that had been passed. That's exactly the thing, because maybe it's a hard one.
You and I are both Christina Prevett fans. We've already had Christina on the podcast. She's
Yeah, of
amazing.
course.
Yeah.
She, or maybe even like other colleagues, Margie Davenport,
Yep. We've
as
had
well as
Margie
Grain
on.
Donnelly. These are two
Love
people
her. Yeah.
that do a great part of that. And Margie Davenport, especially, I started to get in contact with her because she had that Get Active questionnaire for pregnancy,
Yes.
which
Yep.
I translated now into the German version, because this is something that is a validated questionnaire.
Yes.
Yeah, let's stick with these two. Let's
I
say
love
Margie
it.
Davenport
I'm a
and
big fan,
Grain
so
Donnelly.
all for
So
it.
it's
Yeah.
nice.
I
Yeah, it's
love
completely
also
fine.
to I'm sorry to talk over you. It's so cool too that I feel like and maybe the pandemic had something to do with this, that we all sort of turned towards social and virtual to find resources, because where we are locally, it's in Canada, it's, in, Northern Ireland, it's in the UK, Germany, like wherever. We've got people all over the world and we're having these same conversations, but it is a really small community. And I love that there's
It is, yeah.
crossover between my two favorite things, which are lifting and running. And that's where I just love that my workout besties are all talking together, which I love.
Nice.
So awesome. All right. And then last one, what does it mean to you to be an active mom in postpartum?
I think it's for me most to be not only an idol for my kid, because
Mm,
I also see other people who are not, or parents who are not active.
yeah.
And for me, it's something I could never imagine being an unfit mom, because the day is so challenging with a toddler, and being not fit would be so much more exhausting. And every time we go into an indoor playground, I feel like I'm the only one being so active, like a monkey running around my kid and not sitting just
Yeah.
on the outside. And seeing that my son sees me training and then he tries to imitate me. And this is so cute. This is something that means so much to me,
Yeah.
being an active mom. So he sees an active lifestyle and he adapts to it, and maybe he likes to train one day too,
Mm-hmm.
if it's MMA or weightlifting or whatever. But this is something that is very important for me. Yes.
And how lucky for him that his mom is a total badass, by the way. That's
Yeah, a lot of
awesome.
people are like, "What do you do in the playground?" It's like, yes, I just beat up other moms. We had
Right?
actually
Exactly. I know who
we
to
had
call now.
another we had another podcast with friends from me in Germany here,
Mhm.
and the title of that one, which was literally, it happened. I did an Instagram story, and it was before my boxing fight in
Yeah.
March, and I went with my kid at the playground and said, "Playground in the morning, box fight in the evening," and this was quite funny. So I really like that
That's
metaphor. It was very
awesome.
funny.
I love that. I love that. If you want to know more about Paulina, you can find her at paulina.balboa on Instagram. Paulina, thanks so much. I'm glad we got to chat in
Thank
person. And
you. Yes,
thanks for
time flew
all
away.
your education and dropping into the PhD space and all that good stuff. So thanks so much for being on.
Thank you.